Now, you were critical of Colby for saying, that he wants to have it both ways, but at the same time, Europe is investing more in defense, which is a good thing, and they will become more independent of the United States. But you still think that they'll function as an ally?
Well, I think that I referenced in the piece a gentleman named William Ucci, who's a professor at UCLA for many years, who's worked on management and business. And what he found was that in any organization, it doesn't matter if it's a country or an international organization or a company or a city council, you can have different ways of organizing it. Either you can have sort of an authoritarian structure where one person makes all the decisions and tells everyone else what to do. You can have a bureaucracy which says, well, you need to do this, and if you do this, we'll give you this reward, and if you don't do this, we'll give you this punishment. Or you can have an environment in which, even though there are not sort of stated rules, everyone sort of understands what the mission is, what's at stake, and so on. And it shouldn't come as a surprise that that third group, those organizations, tend to be much better run and much more efficient and much happier. And I want to give you an example of this as it relates to the U.S. and Europe. You probably remember in 2024 there was a big prisoner exchange between the United States and Russia. And so we gave up a bunch of Russian spies who had been caught in the West, and we got back Evan Gershkovich, the Wall Street Journal reporter, and Paul Whelan and some others. And the way that exchange worked was the United States had a few Russian spies in its jail, but they were very low level. The person that the Russians really, really wanted was a Russian hitman named Vadim Krasikov, who was in jail in Berlin.
Right.
So
the Germans were reluctant to surrender.
Right. And so you have to look at this from the perspective of Olaf Scholz, who was chancellor at the time. He's thinking, well, if I give this guy up, this is a sign to other Russian hitmen that Putin is going to look after you if you go to Germany. And so if you're caught here, no worries, they can get you out. If I don't give him up, it's a sign that if you get caught in Germany, you're going to spend the rest of your life in jail here. And maybe that's enough to give the next Russian hitman in line second thoughts. And so this was a real calamity for Germany that they had to give this guy up. But you mentioned that they were reluctant. What actually happened was very, very simple. Biden just got on the phone with Scholz and said, hey, can you release this guy as part of the exchange? And Scholz said, okay. And it was basically as simple as that. The Germans trusted that the Americans were doing the right thing. And so I'm imagining, 2 years later, if this were happening today, would it happen the same way between Trump and Friedrich Merz? And the answer is, well, it might. But in return for giving this guy up, Germany would want something from the United States. They would want more missiles, or they would want better cost sharing on their bases, or something like this. And so this is the problem with having a transactional foreign policy. In a transaction, you need to give something up as well. And so I think, to your question, the relationship between the United States and Europe, there's no reason that it has to be in trouble. But to the extent that the United States is no longer on the same page about the values we hold or what our strategic interests are, that is a big, big wedge between the U.S. and Europe. And I think there's no guarantee that they have to split, but if they do end up splitting, that's going to be why.
Well, Trevor, thank you for your insights.
My pleasure to be here.